You might think a car accident is just a setback, but what if it's the start of your greatest love story? She crashed into the car of a CEO, and instead of a police report, she got a ride all the way to the altar, because sometimes chaos is the only road to happiness. Before the story begins, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and turn on the notification bell to help these stories reach more hearts like yours. Ramona was officially late. The kind of late that could not be smoothed over with a traffic was terrible, but demanded dramatic apologies, convincing tears, and maybe even a human sacrifice. Her cousin's wedding, the cousin she loved like a sister, was probably starting already. And there she was, stuck in the car, fighting to keep her heel from slipping off the pedal. Her dress crumpled in a war against the seatbelt, and her phone buzzing on speaker. "Ramona, where are you?" April was practically screaming on the other end. In the car, on my way, very zen and serene. Like a Disney princess. Disney princesses do not curse at other drivers. Some of them should, Ramona muttered. Swerving around a pothole like she was in an illegal street race. She took a deep breath, turned the corner, and... Bam! The world jolted, her hood colliding with something solid, shiny, and absurdly expensive. The engine coughed like an asthmatic old man and died right there. Ramona blinked. "No, no, no," she murmured, slapping the steering wheel. "Come back to life, creature, come on!" The door of the car she had hit opened, and out stepped a man in a dark, flawless suit, as though sculpted by millionaire architects. Dominic Ruth. He looked at the damage the way someone analyzes a spreadsheet of irreversible losses. "Impressive," he said dryly, his low voice dripping with sarcasm. I had no idea drivers with such perfect aim existed. Ramona shoved her door open, trying to appear confident despite the disaster written all over the car. Well, at least now your car has personality. Before it just looked like a bank commercial. Dominic raised one eyebrow. "Is that your version of an apology?" "Depends. Did it work?" "No." "Then I will try again at the next accident." The silence between them was broken by the engine's weak, rattling attempt to start, wheezing like a sick old man struggling uphill. Ramona turned the key once, twice, 3 times, each failure more humiliating than the last. "Come on, sweetheart. Just one more try," she whispered, caressing the steering wheel as though it were a patient in a coma. "You cannot betray me today of all days, okay? We have history, memories." The car answered with an indignant clank-clank. Dominic folded his arms, watching the spectacle like someone tuning into a second-hand embarrassment reality show. "Fascinating. Are you trying to seduce the engine?" Ramona slammed the wheel. "Look, it works on people, it should work on machines too." "Allow me to disagree." Dominic adjusted the expensive watch on his wrist. "People do not seem to work very well with you either." Ramona's eyes widened, offended. "Excuse me?" "Well, so far you have only managed to crash into my car, insult my sense of humor, and flirt with an inanimate object. Hardly an impressive resume." She huffed, twisting the key harder, and the engine let out one last tortured gasp before dying forever. "Damn it. I am going to miss the wedding." Ramona threw her head back against the seat. "My cousin will hate me forever. My aunt will cry, and my mother will say it is all because of my Scorpio sign." Dominic regarded her with that irritating calm of someone who had never been late for anything in his life. He adjusted his jacket, smoothed his perfectly combed hair, and said, as though it were the most obvious solution, "I can give you a ride." Ramona turned her face toward him slowly, as if he had just committed blasphemy. "What? You?" She pointed at him from head to toe. "You do not exactly scream altruism." Dominic tilted his head slightly, almost smiling. "I am not. But I prefer that to standing here listening to you beg the engine with motivational quotes." Ramona pressed her lips together, her ego wanting to say no, but her tight dress and the ticking clock screaming yes. 5 minutes later, there she was, sunk into the soft leather seat of his car, looking around like she had accidentally boarded a private jet. "Wow," she murmured, pinching the upholstery. "This car has more luxury than my entire apartment. I feel like if I sneeze in here, I will have to pay a fee." Dominic did not take his eyes off the road. "Only if you sneeze too hard." Ramona blinked at him, offended. Do you have any idea how hard it is to be grateful and sarcastic at the same time? Imagine how hard it is for me, driving while ignoring you simultaneously. Ramona huffed, folding her arms. Perfect. This is going to be the longest ride of my life. Believe me, Miss Monreal, for me as well. So, she began, fiddling with the hem of her dress. Do you always kidnap women who destroy your car? Or am I a special case? You are the worst investment of my career. How romantic. And here I thought you were falling in love. Dominic glanced at her for half a second. Dangerous. Then he turned back to the road as if nothing had happened. When they pulled up in front of the venue, Ramona barely opened her door before hearing the chorus. Ramona, finally! Her aunt cried, dragging the entire family over to welcome her. All eyes immediately fell on Dominic, who stepped out of the car like a late groom. Elegant, commanding, a magnet for attention. And this is? Her nosy aunt fired. Ramona froze, her brain spinning in panic. Dominic opened his mouth to answer, but she was faster. Boyfriend, she announced practically like a trumpet blast. Silence. Then a collective explosion of gasps and applause. Finally, and it was about time. He is gorgeous, Ramona. Dominic slowly turned his face toward her, eyes narrowing like a man calculating the interest on an unpayable debt. Pardon? He murmured low, just for her. Ramona gave a nervous smile, whispering back, Play along, please. They are like sharks. If they smell blood, it is over. Dominic drew a deep breath, adjusted his jacket, and to her surprise, smiled at the family as if he had rehearsed the role, and Ramona knew she was officially doomed. If Ramona thought boyfriend would be just a little emergency lie, she clearly did not know her own family. The moment the word left her lips, everyone latched onto Dominic as if he were the last chocolate cookie on the shelf. Aunt Donna practically sparkled. Ramona, you never told us anything about him, she exclaimed, already nudging the cousin beside her. And look at that posture, that polite smile, that height. He looks like a suit catalog model. Dominic raised an eyebrow. As if to say, yes, I know. Ramona took a deep breath, trying to push back the relatives multiplying around him. Guys, relax, he needs to breathe, she muttered, but it was too late. Her grandmother was already pulling Dominic by the arm, delighted. Finally, my granddaughter brings home a decent man, she announced to half the reception hall, as though it were a national victory. It was about time, Ramona. You are not a teenager anymore. Ramona closed her eyes, feeling the blow land straight in her soul. Thank you, Grandma. Your kindness overwhelms me. Dominic, however, was unfazed. He simply smiled at the elderly lady, kissed her hand with elegance, and said, I promise to take good care of her. That was enough for the entire room to erupt in collective sighs. Ramona nearly fainted onto the carpet. Meanwhile, Uncle Alfred was already asking absurd questions. So, Dominic, do you like barbecue? Because around here we only seal deals over skewers, Dominic answered with perfect seriousness. I usually close business in boardrooms, but barbecue depends on the quality of the meat. Her uncle went silent for 3 seconds, then grinned as if he had found a partner in crime. I like this one. Ramona, desperate, dragged Dominic toward the dessert table. You did not have to kiss my grandmother's hand. Of course I did, he replied, pouring himself a glass of champagne as if he owned the party. I would rather they think I am perfect than dig into where I actually came from. And where did you come from? She jabbed, sarcastic. The catalog of unreachable, dangerous men? He leaned closer, voice low. Keep mocking me and I might start enjoying it. Ramona nearly choked on her cupcake but was saved by April, her friend and roommate, who appeared like a lightning bolt. So it is true? Her eyes widened at Dominic. You are the mysterious boyfriend? Ramona widened her eyes back at her, silently begging. April caught on immediately. A mischievous smile spread across her face. I approve, she said, before taking a sip of her drink and disappearing into the crowd laughing. Dominic leaned in, his half-smile looking more like a threat. She is sharp. I can already tell you have zero control over your own narrative. Ramona sighed, too drained to argue. But another surprise cut her off. The DJ announced the dance floor was open, and before she could protest, her family shoved her and Dominic right into the middle. And that is how, in the middle of her cousin's wedding, Ramona found herself dancing an improvised waltz with the billionaire she was supposed to hate. While everyone watched them as though it were the final scene of a fairy tale, Dominic tilted his head toward her, murmuring, "Darling, I think your lie is getting out of hand." Ramona forced a smile, her eyes locked on his. "If you do not help me hold this together, I'm going to be crucified by my family." He slid his hand firmly around her waist and whispered against her ear, "And what if I said I am starting to enjoy this?" Ramona's heart raced, and deep down she knew that night was far from ending well. The dance that had started as an innocent act quickly turned into a public spectacle. Ramona felt the weight of every gaze, as if the entire ballroom had stopped just to witness each awkward movement she made. Dominic, on the other hand, glided across the floor with the ease of someone born ready to be applauded. His posture was firm, his eyes confident, his restrained smile dripping with mockery. She tried to keep the rhythm, but her dress tangled with her heels, and every step felt like a trap waiting to send her crashing down. When she stumbled, Dominic caught her waist effortlessly, leaning in far too close. "If your plan was to faint dramatically, you're doing an excellent job. You dance like you are at a board meeting," she shot back, forcing a smile. "Zero emotion, just numbers and graphs. Better that than looking like someone fleeing a burning building." Ramona bit her tongue, but there was no time for a comeback. Her aunts whispered loudly, as if they were sports commentators narrating every step. "They look so good together. Did you see how he holds her waist? That man means business." Her cheeks burned. And to make matters worse, one of her cousins, tipsy on cheap champagne, shouted from the corner, "Dominic, you will dance with me next, right?" The ballroom erupted in conspiratorial laughter. Ramona froze, ready to implode, but Dominic answered, "Without rushing, I do not usually dance with direct competitors." The laughter grew louder. Her cousin shrank back, blushing. Ramona nearly choked on his audacity. "Direct competitors?" She hissed at him, furious. "I am only protecting your territory. Was that not the point when you introduced me as your boyfriend?" The song ended, and the round of applause that followed felt like a trophy, awarded to the most unlikely couple of the night. Ramona took a deep breath, but relief was short-lived. Katie, the bride, appeared in a whirlwind of tulle, eyes shining. "I knew it," she exclaimed, clutching them both by the arms. "I always said love shows up when you least expect it." Ramona tried to protest, but Katie did not give her the chance. "I want details. How long? Who made the first move? Does he snore?" Ramona's legs went weak. Dominic, with the calm of a man delivering a keynote speech, answered, "The first move was hers, literally. She crashed into my car." Katie gasped, then burst out laughing. "It is perfect. Fate wrote this story," she declared, hugging them tightly. "I always knew Ramona's life would be a crazy romantic comedy." Ramona closed her eyes, begging silently to disappear. Dominic seemed to enjoy every second. And it was only the beginning. The microphone began circulating among the guests. Each shared kind words with the newlyweds, but soon the crowd started chanting for the new couple. "Say something, Ramona. Say something, Dominic." Ramona raised her hands, trying to refuse. Dominic, relentless, took the microphone. The ballroom fell silent. "If there is anything scarier than meeting the entire family at once," he said, his voice steady, "it is dancing in public without rehearsal." The room erupted in laughter. He continued, "But if I have to face it, I am glad it is with Ramona by my side." The aunts cried. The cousins applauded. Even Grandma raised her glass in an impromptu toast. Ramona was speechless, stunned. Dominic returned the microphone and guided her out of the ballroom, unbothered. In the garden, strung with lights, the air was cooler. Ramona spun toward him, furious. "You have completely lost your mind." Dominic raised his glass and took a sip. "On the contrary, I am just giving them what they want to hear." "What? They want to hear?" "Dominic, they are going to believe every word." He shrugged, stepping closer. "Exactly." She swallowed hard, her heart pounding. The game had spun out of control. That was when Katie reappeared, still glowing. "You two were wonderful," she said, clasping their hands. "The whole family is already betting you will be the next bride, Ramona." The world tilted for a second. Dominic arched an eyebrow, smiling with the air of someone already 3 moves ahead. Ramona barely had time to react. The party went on until late, but she could hardly enjoy it. She was exhausted from holding up. The lie, dodging questions and enduring Dominic's overwhelming, irresistible presence. When she finally managed to escape, it was past midnight. Dominic, always in control, walked her to the car. The silence at first was heavy, but it did not last. "So," Ramona began, fiddling with her wrinkled dress. "Congratulations. You just won over my entire family." Dominic started the car, his voice calm. "It was easier than winning you over." "Who said I am available?" She shot back, crossing her arms. "Let us say you do not have much of a choice. You already promoted me to boyfriend in front of everyone. That was an accident." "Interesting. First the car, now the lie. You have a real talent for accidents." She sighed, exasperated. "You know what, Dominic? You are unbearable. I prefer uncontrollable." Ramona glared at him, and for an instant the air between them shifted. There was something about his provocation that made her far too nervous. Dominic pressed the accelerator lightly, the car gliding down the empty road. She tried to catch her breath. "Do not think this is going to happen again." He smirked, eyes fixed on the road. "We will see." Ramona stayed silent, but deep down she knew he was right, and suddenly she realized that this ride might be only the beginning of something far more complicated than she had ever imagined. The smell of coffee filled the apartment before Ramona even opened her eyes. Hot, strong, and, thanks to April, absurdly well made. The aroma was the only affection the morning offered, because the rest of reality was collapsing. "Wake up, professional liar." The voice came from the kitchen, laced with sarcasm and morning mockery. Ramona rolled over in bed, the wedding dress still hanging from the doorknob. Just looking at it gave her almost the same hangover as the champagne. "I did not lie. I improvised," she answered, her voice still crumpled. "You called a man your boyfriend in front of your grandmother. That is not improvisation, that is live fan fiction." Ramona dragged herself into the kitchen, where April, impeccable in a beige sweatsuit and a deliberately messy bun, was already typing on her phone with the same enthusiasm as someone commenting on a reality show. "I am updating our group. Ramona and the mysterious CEO. Everyone is demanding pictures. You are mocking me while I suffer. That is cruelty. That is entertainment. And let's be honest, if you were writing your own romantic comedy, you would never start it with a car crash and a wedding toast pretending to be bride number 2. Ramona sat down with a steaming cup of coffee in her hands. The curtains swayed with the shy morning breeze, but in her mind only one thing kept replaying, his look. Calm, cold, almost bored, and yet present. As if, in some absurd way, he had enjoyed himself. She stared into her cup for a moment. He is not going to text. There is no reason he would. It was just a social stumble with collateral damage. And yet something in her pulsed with curiosity. How could someone be so infuriating and so intriguing at the same time? She knew she would never see him again. But why on earth did that idea bother her so much? Across the city, sunlight spilled with clinical precision through the mirrored windows of the top floor of a corporate skyscraper. Every object in that office looked like it had been placed with a ruler, a square, and an asset control spreadsheet. Dominic observed the city as if it were a board game, and he, the only player holding the rules. But at that moment, it was not a multi-million-dollar merger or a falling graph that occupied his mind. It was the image of a woman stumbling in a pale pink dress, arms thrown over his shoulder. The sarcastic smile, the way she had inserted herself into a family of strangers, as though she had always belonged there. Victor appeared at the office door with the same energy of someone who deliberately ignored the concept of privacy. He leaned against the frame, arms crossed, that irritating smirk already in place. Wow, CEO face. Total silence, and not a single spreadsheet open. That is new. Dominic did not take his eyes off the city below. I am always thinking. Yes, but now you are doing it with a face like you got struck by lightning. And you never ever make a lightning face. Dominic slowly lifted his eyes. Victor walked in, flopped onto the leather sofa, and continued. All right, let's hear it. What happened? A meeting went sideways? A fund froze. Or, and this is my favorite bet, you met someone who did not try to impress you. Dominic turned his gaze back to the window. His expression, as always, was unreadable, but Victor was practiced. He could smell his brother's emotional disturbance from miles away. Oh, here we go. That is it, isn't it? Victor said, laughing. The iceberg found a spark. Billet, Dominic stayed silent, but the slight tightening of his jaw was enough. She crashed into my car, he said at last. Victor's eyes widened, then he burst out laughing. Is that a metaphor for love at first sight, or was it literal? Literal. A bad turn, a ruined bumper, and a lie. Long story. A long story that ends with you staring out the window like you are listening to Coldplay inside your head. That I have to hear. Dominic turned, one hand slipping into his pocket. She dragged me into a wedding. Pretended I was her boyfriend. The family believed it, and I let them. Victor blinked, then smiled like he had just been handed a gift. This is brilliant. It was not supposed to be. It was an accident. I was only giving her a ride, me of course. And you decided to give a speech at stranger's wedding for what reason? A humanitarian impulse? Dominic picked up his phone from the desk, turning it in his fingers. The image of her was still sharp. The bold look, the sharp tongue, the way she turned any disaster into a spectacle. Elegant chaos, unpredictable. She is just a woman. Just a woman who crashed into your car, lied to your face, and still made you laugh. Dominic, my brother, you laughed. I thought that would only happen at your funeral. Dominic did not answer. But Victor was right, that was exactly the problem. At the dental office where Ramona worked, life returned to normal. Or tried to. The phone rang nonstop, the printer jammed halfway through invoices, and the coffee maker groaned with the sound of imminent death. Montreal. Line 2. A lady asking if her denture can be made in neon pink, shouted the colleague at reception. Ask her to confirm if it is for Halloween or just a desperate cry for attention. Ramona replied with an automatic smile, but her head was not there. While she typed out the day's appointments, her mind slipped back to the night before, to the way Dominic had held her waist, to the way he spoke, always in that bored tone that challenged any attempt to confront him. Her phone buzzed. A message from April. If he texts, take your time to answer. Pretend you have a busy life, an important job, maybe even a spiritual retreat. If he does not, say you are above it, even if you are lying on the floor. Ramona rolled her eyes and typed back, thanks for the practical guide to being a mature, emotionally stable woman. By the end of her shift, it was Matt who showed up, Ramona's brother, exhausted from the gym, with the face of someone already spoiling for a fight. So, he started, leaning against the counter. Who is the idiot? What idiot? The one you took to the wedding that everyone now wants to know if he is the future father of your children. Ramona let out a tired huff. He is a mistake. An accident. A case of mistaken social identity. Does he have a record? Matt, I just want to know if he has a social security number. And if it actually belongs to him. She turned away, tidying the folders. He just gave me a ride. I lied. The family believed it. And he decided to play Broadway actor. The end. Then why are you blushing? Because you are unbearable. He raised his hands in surrender. Just saying, if he shows up here asking for a whitening treatment, I am throwing a punch. Ramona smiled, but inside something stirred. She did not want to admit it, but she had already checked her phone 5 times during that short conversation. Dominic spent the day buried in meetings, contracts, and million-dollar decisions. No expression. No hesitation, except one, her name flashing in his mind like an annoying pop-up. Ramona Montreal, dental office secretary, messy hair, sarcastic stare, the scent of cheap perfume that, for some reason, still lingered in his memory. She was not supposed to be there, but she was. Between a financial analysis and a cold lunch, he opened his phone. He typed, deleted, typed again. The car was easy to fix. The mess you left in my week, not so much. That night, Ramona sprawled on the couch with April, watching a romantic comedy that now felt almost like a documentary. Do you think they really fall in love in this movie? April asked, a bucket of popcorn on her lap. I think it was the script. Real life, you bump into a CEO and end up becoming your family's running meme. April laughed out loud. Okay, it was a collective breakdown. But tell me something. What? Did you want him to reach out? Ramona thought for 2 seconds. Then her phone buzzed. She grabbed it. Greenlit, unknown number. One message, the car was easy to fix. The mess you left in my week, not so much. Her heart gave a little jump. April read over her shoulder and screamed. Ma, he is back! Shh, do not scream. Oh, I am screaming. A man with initiative, a sense of humor, and a mysterious D at the end of the sentence? That is practically emotional pornography. Ramona dropped the phone onto her chest, staring at the ceiling. I should ignore him. And miss the next chapter of this romantic breakdown? Not a chance. She closed her eyes. But she already knew. That man, cold, sarcastic, perfectly infuriating, was not out of her life. He might just be starting to walk in. His message was still there, at the top of the screen, like a notification from the universe saying, "Did you really think you were going to escape?" Ramona did not reply, not yet. She had spent the last few minutes standing frozen in the middle of the living room, while April circled her like a detective with an invisible megaphone. Okay, we need to act strategically. We cannot look desperate. We! Ramona arched an eyebrow. The message was sent to me. Not to us, please. This is a joint mission now. Me, you, and a touch of sarcasm. She huffed and dropped the phone on the couch as if it had gone radioactive. I am not going to reply, that is it. Silent treatment, indifference, emotional maturity. April sat beside her, silent for a whole 3 seconds. Then she looked at her friend with genuine pity. Ramona, your hands are sweating. She got up again, went into the kitchen, filled a glass with water, and stared at her own reflection in the window. The mess you left in my week? Not so much. Who writes something like that? Who writes something like that without planning something? Maybe she was not ready for a new beginning. But Dominic definitely did not seem like someone who accepted full stops. On the other side of the city, Dominic sat in his car, elbow resting against the window, watching the dark city, the red glow of brake lights, the blur of pedestrians. He was efficient, cold, disciplined, a man of schedules, checklists, and investments. And yet here he was, thinking about the woman who mistook lipstick for a social weapon, who danced like she was defying gravity, and who, without meaning to, had dragged him into the center of a lie. And the worst part? He had not hated it. Victor, being the nosy brother he always was, had been sending him voice notes all day. You realize this has the potential to blow up into a family scandal, right? Have you picked the catering for the engagement yet? One of our aunts already embroidered her name on a dish towel. The situation is irreversible. Dominic ignored them, but a part of him, the part he disliked admitting existed, kept wondering if Ramona still laughed that same way when she was alone. The next morning, Ramona dragged herself into the dental office with the energy of someone who had been run over by a gang of thoughts. Light blue uniform, hair tied back in a rush, crooked lipstick. Montreal! Her co-worker at reception called as soon as she walked through the door. We have 3 pending estimates, 2 furious mothers and 1 patient asking if he can bring his own pliers. Perfect. Starting the day strong, she replied, tossing her bag down with poetic violence. She tried to focus, ignore the notification, pretend she was a centered, grounded woman, but his image kept returning in waves. The suit, the slow stare, the way he tilted his head whenever she said something stupid. And as if her mind were conspiring against her, the phone buzzed. Another message. Are you pretending you did not read it? Or do you need visual encouragement? She bit her lip. How could this man have so much talent for being irritating and seductive at the same time? She replied, Maybe the damage you mentioned includes an excess of ego. He did not take long. If that is the case, the accident is not to blame. The company is. She let out a short laugh. She should not have liked that. But she did. Dominic was not a man of flirtation. He had no idea what he was doing. But something in him wanted to provoke, to drag out replies, to find out if this woman who had burst out of chaos was only that, or if there was some hidden logic behind her. At his office, the assistant knocked on the door with a reminder. You have lunch with the legal team in 30 minutes. Cancel it. Send a voucher. Tell them it is a gift. And should I come up with an excuse? Tell them I have an appointment with someone more unpredictable. Dominic did not know what he wanted, but he knew exactly where he wanted to be. By late afternoon, Ramona left the office wrecked, mascara smudged, feet aching, dignity partially missing. And then she saw the black car parked across the street. "No," she muttered. "No, no, no." The window rolled down. "Dominic, your Uber to oblivion has arrived." That is the creepiest line I have ever heard. She shot back but crossed the street anyway. "I brought pizza," he said, lifting a box. She hesitated. I should say no, then say it. "Does it smell like 4 cheese?" "And stuffed crust." She got into the car. "You are far too strategic for my taste." The conversation between them in the car was a minefield of provocations and sparks. "So, do you usually use accidental encounters as an approach tactic?" she began. "And do you usually kidnap CEOs for family parties?" "Look, it is more productive than it seems." He took a bite of pizza, then glanced sideways at her. "There is a part of me that should be annoyed with all of this. But, you seem to enjoy yourself. I am just curious." "Curious? About what else you are capable of inventing?" "Oh, great. I have become a social experiment." "No, you have become a strategic distraction," she choked. "Is that a compliment?" "In my language, yes." They parked near a park. The sky was already darkening, the trees swaying slowly with the wind. Ramona stepped out of the car and walked to a bench. Dominic followed, carrying the pizza box. They sat down, and for the first time said nothing. The silence was not uncomfortable. It was dense. "Why did you look for me?" she asked, staring at the glow of the streetlights. "I do not know." That is such a CEO thing to say. "Then here is a non-professional answer because you messed with my head." "And I hate mess. But I like the side effect." "What side effect?" "The laughter. The way you speak as if the world always owes you something. You are impossible. And yet you are the one who dragged me into your family soap opera. And you are the one who accepted the lead role. I admit, I was seduced by the chaotic script. Maybe it was too soon to call it a connection. But something there was already beyond both of their control." The next morning, April stormed into the bedroom with a glass of green juice and an interrogator's glare. "You went to bed without telling me anything." "Nothing." Ramona was sprawled on the bed, blanket up to her nose. "We ate, we talked. We laughed. I came back alive. Did he touch you?" "April. Did he or did he not? Your arm, your hand, your soul?" "Just pizza." He touched a slice of pizza. April rolled her eyes. "This story is going to end with you getting married in the same place as your cousin. Only pregnant. Charming April, poet of chaos. I am only warning you. If he touches your heart, you are done." Ramona hid her face, and she knew. She was not ready yet, but she did not want to stop. Meanwhile, Dominic replayed the recording of an important meeting, but the image had no focus. The voices were noise. What dominated his memory was the sound of her laughter. The way she spoke as if the whole world were the backdrop of her own sitcom. He was not planning anything, but he was already too involved to pretend otherwise. That night, Ramona received another message. "I thought of a better lie. Next time say we met during a robbery. It will sound less traumatic," she typed back. "Only if you were the one robbing me." He replied, "Deal. Now all that is left is for you to say when." And Ramona finally smiled. She knew she was sinking, but for the first time in a long time, she did not want to escape. The messages had started as an exception, a glitch in the routine's algorithm, a just to clarify the car repair that turned into, "You still owe me a dance." And before Ramona realized it, she was already arguing with Dominic about whether pineapple on pizza was a federal crime, or simply a justifiable reason to end a friendship. "It's an assault on gastronomy," he typed on a random Tuesday. "It's juicy and democratic," she replied, sprawled on the couch laughing at her own enthusiastic defense. The days went by like people pretending not to have intentions. Casual conversations, accidental meetups, all under the noblest pretext, tying up loose ends. First, he showed up to hand-deliver the insurance paperwork. Then he appeared with a bag containing something she'd left in the car, a generic blue pen that wasn't even hers. By the third encounter, It was far too late to fake surprise. At the office, Ramona kept her composure. But Matt wasn't stupid. That random smile again? He asked while passing through reception. Either you're in love or you swapped your coffee for something illegal. It's just a conversation, Matthew. With a human who has a name and a taxable income, apparently. Perfect. Let's just hope he's an eccentric billionaire with harmless hobbies, like pushing women into dancing by pretending to be their boyfriend. Ramona told him to go dig through files, literally. And yes, she tried to convince herself it was nothing more than that. Just a string of sarcastic exchanges between two emotionally stable adults. But when she lay down at night, her mind kept meticulous accounts. The number of times he made her laugh, the seconds his breath had been too close, the looks that lasted far too long to be considered merely polite. Across town, Dominic was nowhere near a couch. Sitting at the conference table at Bell and Crane Capital, he stared at a projected report that was supposed to matter. But Ramona's name kept showing up in his mind with an irritating frequency. Like a password typed wrong so many times the system already suggested changing it. Victor noticed. The presentation's great, but you look like you're about to text someone you should be ignoring, he muttered, arms crossed. I'm thinking about the Westbridge merger. Of course. And by merger, you mean a head-on collision with a sarcastic, stubbornly irresistible woman? Dominic stayed silent, eyes fixed on the screen, but the pen spun restlessly between his fingers. There was something about her that rattled the discipline he spent his whole life cultivating. She was calculated chaos, a crooked curve on his carefully programmed road, and against every reasonable logic he wanted to see her again. He wanted to know why she scrunched her nose when she laughed, why she changed the subject when she was nervous, and, most of all, why he felt he'd barely understood half of who she was. On Wednesday, Ramona left work as the sun dipped behind the buildings. Walking down the street, there he was, leaning against his black car, arms crossed, sleeves rolled to his elbows, like that was the official uniform of man who knows exactly the effect he has. I thought CEOs lived locked in glass rooms, she said as she approached. And I thought secretaries were stuck in overtime. He shot back, no smile, but with a gleam in his eyes that sent her pulse racing. He opened the passenger door. I need an unbiased opinion on a new cafe that just opened in the neighborhood. And apparently, you're the only person in this city who treats me like a human being, without a net worth sign hanging around my neck. She hesitated, purely for dramatic effect. Because inside, she'd already said yes the moment he said cafe. The place was small, charming, smelling of vanilla and damp wood. Their table looked out onto the street where the lampposts flickered on one by one. So you really do drink coffee, she teased, watching him add sugar. And you really accept invitations without turning them into a comedic escape. Progress. Ramona took a sip, savoring it. Warmth spread through her hands. He watched her with that neutral expression that was anything but neutral. Why me? She asked bluntly. Dominic leaned back, arms crossed. It took him a moment to answer. Because you irritate me. And intrigue me. And I don't like having doubts. She laughed. Dry and quick, but it slipped out anyway. Was that a compliment? That's as close as I can get. In the following days, other invitations appeared, each with a worse excuse than the last. He needed an opinion on a restaurant. She wanted to return the coin purse he swore was hers. It wasn't. They ended up at the grocery store buying snacks for a documentary, which neither of them finished. Too busy debating whether turtles were depressed or just deeply disappointed in humanity. In the middle of it all, something was growing. Not romance, not yet, but a strange hunger to know more, to hear more, to see again. One night, sitting on a park bench after walking aimlessly for 40 minutes, Ramona asked, "Do you always do this?" "Do what?" "Approach so calmly the people who short-circuit you." Dominic stared ahead, hands clasped. "Normally I avoid it." "And why didn't you this time?" He turned his face toward her slowly, his gaze serious but not harsh, as if in that moment he was willing to hand over a piece of himself he couldn't quite explain. "Because for the first time in a long while I wanted to feel uncomfortable." She stayed silent. The wind rustled the leaves. A dog barked in the distance. The city pulsed around them, but nothing competed with that instant. They didn't touch. didn't move closer than they already were. Yet somehow, in a way words couldn't capture, something unspoken was exchanged. Dominic left her at home with a nearly whispered, "Good night." And Ramona climbed the stairs, feeling that, if this were a story, this would be the chapter where the characters don't know it yet, but the reader is already rooting for them. The next morning, Dominic arrived at work earlier than usual. Victor was already in the conference room, scrolling through his phone. "You need to stop looking so casually happy. You'll confuse the shareholders." Dominic just raised an eyebrow. "Investigating my love life now? I'm just saying, no one crunches Bell and Crane numbers with that little grin that screams you spent last night, debating whether a parrot can have an identity crisis." Dominic huffed, but didn't deny it, because yes, he was smiling more, sleeping less, and strangely, it didn't feel like a problem. On Friday night, Ramona received a message that read only, "Have you ever listened to live jazz while eating something absurdly greasy?" It took her exactly 7 seconds to reply. "If it's with you, I'll even sit through German polka and churros fried in bacon fat." The place was a club hidden in the basement of an old building. Where the ceiling was low, the light was amber, and the saxophone seemed to have its own soul. Dominic wore a black shirt and dark jeans, and for the first time he looked less like a CEO and more like a man who had chosen to be there with her. "Do you always go to places like this?" she asked. "No, but I thought you might like something with personality." "And fried food," Ramona laughed. The music wrapped around them like a soundtrack written just for them. Every laugh of hers seemed to echo, as if the room itself approved of the lightness between them. And he found himself noticing the details. Her lipstick, the way she held her fork, cut her burger with dignity, and devoured it without apology. "You look like someone who likes control," she said between bites. "And you look like someone who ignores speed limits on sentimental curves." She arched an eyebrow. Was that a compliment? "That's as close as I can get," he repeated with a half smile. This time she was the one who stayed silent, but her gaze was warmer, less defensive. The following week their meetings multiplied. Always informal, always built on flimsy excuses. One day, she showed up at his office with a box of hot bagels from the most sought-after deli downtown, the one that only opens on Wednesdays, said she just happened to be passing by. He pretended to believe her, offered coffee, and when she left, Dominic caught himself smiling at the empty box for long seconds. Terrifying. Another night, he came to pick her up from work. Matt was at the door, and the look he gave could have cut through concrete. "So you're the mysterious gentleman. And you must be the overprotective brother FBI level." "Exactly." They locked eyes for 2 tense seconds. "Want to come in?" Matt asked finally. "The coffee's terrible, but the judgment is top-notch." Ramona nearly choked laughing. Dominic answered with a contained nod. "Another night, maybe. Tonight I need an opinion on a Chilean wine and a frozen lasagna." Outside the building, Ramona adjusted her purse on her shoulder, flustered. "Sorry about Matt, he doesn't handle change well. Or mysterious men whisking his sister away for spontaneous dinners. Especially those." They stood there face to face under the yellow glow of a street lamp that swayed slightly with the wind. Dominic looked up, then back at her. "Do you always answer everything with sarcasm?" "Only when I feel threatened." "Am I a threat?" She bit her lip, laughing softly. "I don't know. I'm not sure yet." Dominic had never been one to prolong social interactions. For him, everything had a timeline, a goal, a return. But with her, minutes stretched out. Conversations ended, leaving him wanting more. He found himself counting the days until the next coincidence. Victor noticed. Of course he noticed. "Does she call you?" "Sometimes." "And you call her?" "Rarely. But you think about it a lot?" Dominic exhaled deeply, downing his whiskey. "More than I'd like." Victor chuckled. "That has a name, brother. Curiosity. Fascination. Temporary loss of focus. Emotional interest disguised as mild irritation." Dominic scoffed, but didn't deny it. Ramona, meanwhile, was divided. Between the eyes that disarmed her and the mind that warned, "He doesn't belong in your world." April saw it all. "You're in love." "I am not." "Yes, you are. You laugh at notifications. You're picking outfits without reason. You agree with me just because you're distracted. That's dangerous." He's just Different. Different like a penguin in the desert. Doesn't fit, but you can't stop staring. Ramona laughed. But she knew. The fall was slow, and she was already halfway down. On Thursday, Dominic appeared with a new proposal. Have you ever been to interactive exhibitions? Depends. Do they smell like paint or pretension? Smells like challenge. And there's a room that reacts to touch. She arched a brow. You want to take me somewhere everything reacts to touch? He shrugged. Seemed to match your impulsive and highly sensory personality. She laughed, but her chest tightened, because he was starting to see her. Not just the sarcasm, the defenses, the chaos, but the layers, the questions behind the jokes. At the exhibit, she laughed as she tested the installations. He watched her with a lightness no one from his company would recognize. When they entered a dark room where projections danced across the walls, she grabbed his hand, without thinking. They stood side by side, watching the lights transform at their fingertips, and he felt it, a different kind of tension, not just physical, not only emotional. It was as if the world whispered, "Look closely now, because this matters." Back in the car, the air was different, calmer, denser. Have you always been like this? He asked. Like what? So free and trapped at the same time. She drew a deep breath. I don't know. Maybe I'm just trying to make peace with life. Did it hurt you? More than once. But at least now I bite back. Dominic laughed, short but genuine. And you? Have you always been so stiff and elegant? He smiled. I was trained to survive in environments where emotions are weakness. And now, he looked at her. Now I'm wondering if emotions aren't weakness, but tools. And you've been an intensive course. Ramona looked away, her heart stumbling a little. You scare me sometimes. And you challenge me, always. That night after he dropped her off, Ramona stood on the stairs for long minutes. Not going up, not moving. Something was shifting, slowly, deeply. Without promises, without definitions. But the transformation already had a name, and she knew. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. At Bell & Crane, Dominic turned down a dinner with investors, ignored a third call from a client, and dismissed the latest merger proposal with a careless wave. Victor folded his arms. Now that you've basically trashed half the agenda, can I ask, when are you going to actually ask her out? Dominic shut his laptop. When I'm sure she won't run. Or when you accept you'll chase her anyway. Dominic met his brother's gaze. Maybe she isn't just another detour. Victor smiled. Then you better hit the gas. Because at this pace, the story's going to run you over. On Saturday, Ramona went grocery shopping with April. Between the aisles and jokes about aphrodisiac foods, she said, I dreamed about him. April's eyes widened. With clothes or without? With, but it didn't last long. We were in a bookstore, arguing over who had better taste in titles. I woke up irritated because he won. April burst out laughing. You're doomed. Ramona leaned against the cart. I know, later her phone buzzed. The bookstore I mentioned is open. They've got a bestsellers section and decent lattes. Want to defend your literary honor? She stared at the message for long seconds before replying. Only if you promise not to give me judgmental looks when I head straight for the romance shelf. I promise to judge only silently. And maybe, buy one to pretend I understood you a little better. She smiled, because finally he was getting it. It wasn't just about her, or about him. It was about the two of them, walking, slowly, towards something that didn't have a name yet. But by now, every spectator knew the collision was only beginning. The bookstore door opened with the soft chime of a metal bell, the kind that seems to announce not just the arrival of a customer, but the beginning of a story. Ramona stepped in first, coat slightly open, hair still damp from the drizzle, and that curious look of someone trying to play blasé, but was clearly nervous. Dominic followed behind her with the kind of effortless elegance only a man absurdly sure of himself could pull off. Gray shirt, dark jacket, the expression of someone who had already read the entire catalog, but was willing to feign surprise just to see her reaction. Welcome to neutral territory, he said, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. I promised not to judge out loud. And I came armed with sarcasm, Ramona shot back. He tilted his head toward the upstairs level. The romance section's up there. right next to the young adult novels and conspiracy theories. "My favorite kind of company," she replied, already climbing. The steps. Dominic followed. The upper floor was hushed, bathed in amber light, scented with old paper and fresh coffee. The exact blend of comfort and provocation. Tall shelves, corner tables, red armchairs worn with use, and a touch of intimacy that made the place perfect for a date disguised as an outing. Ramona stopped in front of the romance shelf, sliding her fingers reverently along the spines. "Going to choose by the cover?" Dominic teased. "Of course. That's how life works. If it weren't for the cover of your car, I never would have met you." He laughed. For the first time that day, Ramona noticed, and something unfamiliar danced beneath her skin. That laugh, short, muffled, almost reluctant, felt like an unguarded confession, as if he'd forgotten to protect himself. She pulled a random book off the shelf and turned to him. "Okay, judge me for this one." Dominic took the book, read the title, lifted an eyebrow. "Love, Tea, and Scandals at You. Willowshire Castle? A severely underrated masterpiece," Ramona defended deadpan. "That sounds like the title of a Christian newsletter handed out at craft fairs. You don't understand anything about literary sexual tension." "I have field experience," he countered, locking eyes with her. Ramona suppressed a laugh. Dominic didn't. His gaze lingered on her face a beat longer than necessary. And suddenly, it wasn't just provocation anymore. It was study, interest, desire veiled in sarcasm. She looked away first. "Coffee?" she asked, heading toward the small cafe in the corner. "You read my mind," Dominic answered, eyes never leaving her. While they waited for their drinks, they stood side by side at the counter. The barista was far too young to pretend he didn't recognize Dominic from some business magazine cover. But Dominic didn't notice. Because Ramona was right there, inches away, with that sweet perfume and the look of someone who knew exactly the effect she had, and kept pretending she didn't. "Never thought you were someone who actually reads," she said, taking the latte from the barista's hands. "Never thought you were someone who reads about scandalous dukes and accomplice butlers." "Touché," she smiled. "But I do have good taste in scoundrels. I only get involved with the fictional ones. That's not what your family thinks." Okay, that one was good. They sat at a corner table. A yellow lamp cast the glow of a cozy confessional over the wood. Ramona cupped the mug between her fingers. Dominic watched her with almost indecent concentration, as if he were decoding a rare language. "Why'd you agree to go out with me?" he asked straightforward. "Because I was bored," she replied, though her eyes said otherwise. "And now? Now I'm reconsidering the idea of becoming a woman of mysteries and open endings. Doesn't suit you. And you know me? I'm trying." The silence between them, the good kind, thick-charged, the kind that needs no explanation, settled in like a third character at the table. Ramona turned her face toward the window. Outside, the city hurried on, but inside, time seemed to obey another logic. Dominic leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice low. "Do you always hide behind jokes?" She hesitated, then answered, "And do you always ask questions like you're in a job interview?" "Habit. Then tell me, what's your greatest weakness?" Dominic smiled, slow. "Stubborn women who think sarcasm is armor." She bit her lip unintentionally, but Dominic saw it. Something cracked there, or broke free. The exit from the bookstore was slow, intentional. They wandered between the shelves as if stretching out a goodbye, stumbling over sarcastic remarks, questionable books and glances that lasted longer than either would admit. Dominic paid for the romance she had chosen. Scoundrel dukes, as he kept calling it, and even slipped a surprise book into the bag. Ramona tried to peek. "You're not going to tell me? You'll have to read it to find out. And if it's philosophy, trust me." That's exactly what every scoundrel says in Chapter 4. Outside, night had already fallen. The city lights turned the sidewalks into liquid mirrors. A fine drizzle had returned, not enough to soak, just enough to require a coat and an excuse to walk slower. Dominic, of course, offered the car. This time, Ramona accepted without theatrics. But when he opened the passenger door with that discreet tilt of his body, the way he held the umbrella, the way he placed himself subtly between her and the street, something inside her chest faltered. In the passenger seat, the next few minutes were made of loose conversations, comments about the book, and one or two smiles that lingered too long. He drove with a steady hand, but his gaze drifted toward her more often than it should, and she noticed every single time. The car slowed in front of her building, the old facade, the tiled steps cracked in places, the yellow porch light flickering. Dominic turned off the engine. "Thanks for the ride," she said, starting to unbuckle her seatbelt. "Wait." He got out of the car, walked to her side, opened the door with the kind of programmed gesture he'd performed 1,000 times. But here, in this moment, it carried an entirely new meaning. Ramona looked at him, still seated, her heartbeat in a reckless, indecent rhythm. Dominic extended his hand. "This was good. Tonight. You are surprising." She placed her hand in his. "That was almost a compliment, and you almost deserved it." Her eyes lifted, finding his. The air between them was charged with a fine, heavy electricity. The world outside was just a muffled whisper. Dominic didn't say anything else. He simply leaned down. The hand holding hers slid to her waist. The other rose to her face, touching, firmly and carefully at the same time. And then he kissed her. It wasn't a quick kiss, nor a desperate one. It was intentional, intense, pulled by a force they had both denied for far too long. His lips met hers with precision, as if Dominic's entire body had been programmed for that exact fit. Ramona responded, first with surprise, then with certainty. His fingers closed slightly at her waist, pulling her closer. The kiss deepened. She braced a hand against his chest, feeling his accelerated breath. When their lips parted, there was no rush, just the weight of the moment. "Okay," she said, unsure whether to laugh or run. "That was for the book," Dominic answered, still far too close, "or for stealing my attention for an entire week. You haven't read the ending yet. I'm interested in the sequel." She stepped away from the car, still unsteady, her body warm, her face aflame. She unlocked the front door in a nameless state. "Oh, my God." "April," screamed from the kitchen the moment Ramona walked in. "Did you just come back from a Netflix movie? Because that face does not belong to someone who only had coffee." Ramona dropped her purse, leaned against the wall, and released the breath she'd been holding. "He kissed me." "What do you mean he kissed you? Where? How? What was the technical rating?" "At the door, after the bookstore. And I don't know. It was it the kind of kiss that makes you rethink your life, choices, and consider changing your last name?" Ramona laughed. "It was the kind of kiss that makes you think, great, now I'm in trouble." April rushed to her, eyes wide. "And are you?" Ramona thought for a second. "Completely." Across town, Dominic walked into his house, tugging off his jacket with one hand. Victor was on the couch, watching some true crime documentary. Victor switched off the TV slowly, deliberately, like a man preparing to savor a historic moment. "So, finally some progress? Or are you two still stuck in friendship with disguised tension and zero payoff mode?" Dominic tossed his jacket over the armchair. "Bookstore, coffee, and a kiss." Victor's eyes widened. Then he leaned forward, elbows on his knees like he was watching a championship final. "A kiss? After how many dates? 27? He made a theatrical face. "You should get a trophy for emotional restraint. It wasn't planned. Nothing good ever is." Victor smirked. "So?" Dominic poured himself a whiskey and took his time to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost distracted. "Complicated. Which means you're screwed. I need to sit down." "You're already sitting." "I need to sit again. I'm in shock." Dominic looked at him, serious. "I don't know what this is. It's not you, that much I know. But it's good." Victor smiled. Then, brother, welcome to the land of the living. And while the two sides of the city slept, one with a heart on fire, the other with a mind unraveling, outside the rain grew heavier, washing away what had been, soaking what was to come. And neither of them knew yet that everything had only just begun. Ramona tossed and turned in bed, unable to close her eyes. His face was still there, so close it felt like she could feel the heat. Hugging the pillow or burying herself under the covers didn't help. The memory kept replaying every detail, the firmness of his hands at her waist, the way his lips took their time pulling away, the husky tone of his voice when he said he wanted more. She wanted to hate that feeling, but she couldn't. In the Bell and Crane penthouse, Dominic also stared at the ceiling like a man trying to solve an equation without numbers. Logic was useless, discipline failed, and all that remained was that disturbing memory. He had kissed before, of course, but never like that. Never with that absurd certainty that he had no choice. The next morning, Ramona's kitchen turned into an interrogation room. April paced around with a coffee mug as if it were a microphone. So, where's the sequel? Are you setting up chapter 2, or are you just rehearsing? Monologues in the mirror? It doesn't just depend on me. Ramona tried to sound indifferent, but her smile gave her away. Oh, it does. April pointed the mug at her like it was a verdict. That man may be a CEO, but you're the CEO of your love life. Call, text, send smoke signals, I don't care. The phone buzzed on the table. Ramona and April looked at it together. Dinner. Tonight. No bookstores, no disguises. Just us. April screamed like she had just watched an overtime goal. He knows how to play. Ramona took a deep breath, staring at the words as if they were both an invitation and a sentence. That night, she found Dominic waiting outside the restaurant. He looked more casual than usual. Blue shirt unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up. Less CEO, more man, which was even more dangerous. Ready? He asked, as if the question carried hidden layers. For the food or for you? She shot back. He curved one corner of his mouth. To survive. The table felt too small for all the sideways glances, for all the provocations disguised as trivial talk. He spoke about travels. She mocked the meticulous way he chose wine. She told absurd family stories. He pretended to take notes as if they were classified reports. With every laugh, the space between them shrank. After dinner, they walked along the lit street. He brushed her hand lightly, testing. She let it happen. The closeness was electric, and neither was willing to pretend anymore. Thinking of running away? Dominic asked when she glanced at the shop windows. I'm thinking of running. What's the difference? With you, none. He pulled her gently by the hand and pressed his mouth to hers again. The kiss was slow, warm, full of intentions that couldn't fit into words. When they parted, Ramona bit her lip, disarmed. This is insanity. Finally, something we agree on. On Sunday, Victor appeared in Dominic's living room uninvited as always. So, what about the car girl? Ramona. We're already at the first name basis stage instead of automotive incident. Progress. Dominic limited himself to pouring coffee, but the silence spoke for him. Victor grinned. You're smiling to yourself. I need to get this notarized. Ramona didn't escape judgment either. Matt caught her humming while doing the dishes. Okay, who is he? Nobody. Right. And nobody makes you sing like you're in a butter commercial. Don't start, Matthew. He crossed his arms. If he hurts you, I'll break his teeth. Great. While you're at it, ask for a discount on dentures. The dates multiplied. Restaurants, cafes, improbable outings. He'd show up at her office door to take her home. She'd crash his meetings with bagels. Conversations turned into intimate provocations. Sarcasm was no longer just armor. It was a code, a secret language between them. One rainy night, she was on her couch, hair damp, oversized, t-shirt hanging loose. Dominic showed up unannounced, carrying pizza. We didn't plan anything, she said, surprised. I'm improvising. That's not your style. You make me break patterns." They sat side by side, eating straight from the box, laughing at nothing. When their hands reached for the same slice, her heart skipped. He didn't pull away. He simply laced his fingers through hers, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "You drive me crazy." His voice was, low, almost a secret. "And for the first time, I don't want to control it." She held her breath. "I should run now." "You should, but I won't." They kissed again, deeper, hungrier, more surrendered. It wasn't just desire, it was surrender disguised as provocation. Time passed, and they slipped into each other's routines without noticing. He complained about her weak coffee. She mocked his starched shirts. They fought over the remote, battled over car playlists, laughed at their own barbs. But in the end, laughter always came before the fight could end. One Saturday afternoon, they stood on his rooftop, watching the city. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Have you ever thought about how things would be if you hadn't crashed into my car? I'd be home watching reality TV. And me? You'd be alone eating reheated sushi." "Wrong." "Then correct me." He turned her to face him, eyes steady. "I'd be empty." She had no reply. Her chest tightened. When she finally spoke, her voice came weaker. "Dominic, I love you." The words came firm, without hesitation. "This isn't a distraction. It isn't an accident. It's you." Ramona felt the ground sway beneath her. He was not a man of emotional speeches, but there he was, stripped bare in words. And she couldn't hold back. "I love you too." He kissed her with the certainty of a man finally willing to surrender control. She kissed him back with the joy of someone who already knew she was lost. The city sparkled below them, but the entire universe seemed condensed into the narrow space of that embrace. And for the first time, neither of them wanted to run. Life with Dominic didn't turn into a fairy tale. It became a daily chronicle of coffee brewed all wrong, blankets stolen in the middle of the night, and philosophical debates about whether chocolate counts as breakfast. Spoiler, it does, and he lost that battle before he even tried. 3 years after their first kiss, Ramona still rolled her eyes when he alphabetized the books and she rearranged them by level of emotional trauma. She still mocked the way he wore 2 layers of socks to go running, and he still refused to admit that her bagels were better than the ones from the corner bakery. But every morning, when she woke up, she looked at him and thought, "This is the man I crashed my car into." And against all odds, he's still here. On the night of their 3-year anniversary, he took her to the rooftop of an old building downtown. No candles, no audience, no star-studded dinners. Just an old projector, blankets, cheap wine, and a collection of movies they only pretended to like so they could mock them together. 3 years, he said, handing her a small box. She arched a brow. "If this is a GPS bracelet, it's too late. I already know how to escape." He smiled, calm in the way only he could be when he was about to do something that changed everything. "Open it." She did. Inside a simple ring. Elegant, straightforward, just like him. Ramona went quiet for a moment. Then she looked at him. "You forgot to kneel." "I didn't forget. I just figured you'd say no, and then I'd have to stand up embarrassed." "Dominic, Ramona Monreal." He took her hand. "You crashed into my car, kidnapped me for a wedding, wrecked my emotional schedule, and turned my life into a script I never would have written. But strangely, I wouldn't change it for anything. Will you marry me?" She smiled, and cried, and said yes like someone who knew she was choosing the most glorious disaster in the universe. 3 months later, they were married. No floor-length veil or orchestras playing violins. It was a small, joyful event, with Victor honored as the officiant, which guaranteed jokes, embarrassment, and a speech as chaotic as the beginning of their story. April cried in the first minute. Matt threatened Dominic with a baseball bat in the second, and Ramona's grandmother organized an affectionate bingo to guess the month the first great-grandchild would arrive. But at that improvised altar, surrounded by Friends, laughter, and inside jokes. Dominic held her hand and said, "The only certainty I have is this one. You, now and always." She answered with the same certainty. "You can be the CEO of the world, Dominic Ruth. But here, in my universe, you're just the man I love. And by the way, a terrible Parker." Laughter, kisses, applause. And finally the two of them saying yes. Not just to each other, but to chaos, laughter, and every absurd piece of love. A year and a half later, on an ordinary morning, Ramona felt the world spin a little more than usual. She thought it was just too strong coffee, or the pancakes Dominic swore he knew how to make. But the test in the bathroom said otherwise. She stared at the result, then stared at her own reflection. "Okay, I'm pregnant," she said out loud, waiting for the universe to blink in confirmation. Dominic came home from work that night and found her sitting on the bed, surrounded by cookie wrappers, the ultrasound still trembling in her hands. She tried, but the knot in her throat wouldn't let her. He took the paper, read it, and then looked at her with a mixture of fear, awe, and that same expression he had the day she roped him into her cousin's wedding. "This is real?" She nodded. Dominic stepped closer, knelt in front of her, and touched her still invisible belly. "You know what this means, right? That we're about to be responsible for a mini version of chaos?" "No," he smiled. "That I've officially lost control of my life, and I'm okay with it." She laughed through tears. He hugged her tight, the two of them wrapped in tears and silent promises. Later that night, Ramona leaned against him on the couch and murmured, "You know what's craziest? That the kid's going to have our sense of humor? That too. But the craziest part is, realizing this all started with a car crash. Literally." He agreed. "I crashed into his car and ended up with a ride to the altar," she said with a lazy smile. Dominic looked at her, surprised. That would make a great book title. Or a movie. "Hollywood, if you're listening." They laughed and stayed there side by side, writing, without realizing, the best love story they had never planned. Not perfect, but perfectly theirs. So, what did you think of this story? We started with a fender bender and ended with the kind of romance everyone dreams of, full of sparks, tension, humor, and that one kiss worth more than 1,000 declarations. If you loved this couple as much as we did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below, telling us what hooked you the most. Your comment really helps the channel grow. And who knows, the next viral story might be because of you. So share your hype on this journey.